We got some more young people over there.
Can't have standing room only until all the chairs are filled. I'm busy.
You have to sit on my lap. David's picture.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming, our American people. Honor guard, kids, hut. Color guard, present arms. Firing squad, port arms. Half right face. Ready. Aim. Fire. Aim. Fire. Aim. Fire. Honor guard, present arms. Guard, order, arms. Grade rep. On behalf of Post 92 and a grateful nation, it is my honor to present to you the flag of our nation. An honorable service. Cadet Brigade. Honor guard. He's hut. Port arms. Right face. Left face. Forward march. This way, wait. Okay.
Thank you all for coming today. For my brother Tom is going to say a few words about our dad, and then my uncle Steve will say a few words, and then I will. So Tom, would you please come up and say a few words?
Thanks, David. How is everybody? So I went over and visited Mom about 1 o'clock this afternoon. And she said, "You're first, you're the warm-up act." I said, "Thanks, Mom." So I'm going to be the warm-up act. Thought about this the last couple of weeks, and I came up with some things that I found more important to talk about. A little bit about Dad's life and my life, and kind of some stories that I think you'll like, maybe find funny, maybe not funny. I guess it all kind of started, one of the first stories when I was like 9 years old. And played Little League Baseball. I played his team, and Dad was the coach. And we were pretty good, not a really good team. I say we're like the Bad News Bears. We weren't that great, but one of the life lessons I learned was when we played these games early on, we always had the fans in the stands and we're screaming at the umpires. And the coaches on the other team were screaming at the umpires. And Dad never said a word. Sat at the end of the bench. Good call, bad call, and that's it. And slowly but surely we started winning all these games. Because we started to get all the calls. And it comes back to me now, and I said, why were we getting all the calls? It's because he was a nice person. And kindness, I guess. And never braided anybody. And so you saw that, and I said, that's pretty important, because as I lived my life, we would go do things together, and one of the things that always stood out for me was he was always very kind to people. Whether we go to a hardware store, or to a restaurant, or to a bar, always bring them. So then we were going about 13 years old, and he was looking at your watch, Mom, and he decided we're going to go deer hunting. So he'd get us up at this god-awful time. I don't know, it was 3:30, 4 in the morning. And he would take us to this restaurant called Cheap Charlie's. And we would eat, and I'm like, what is this? You can't see. And then we would go out, right, into our hunting blind or wherever we were, at dawn, and we'd hunt deer. And back then, they had a rule, and some years it was buck only. It means you could only shoot deer with antlers, right? Well, one year, maybe it was the second year, David comes running over the hill, sorry David, and says, I swear it had antlers. Another family secret. Needless to say, he buried that deer. Did it have antlers, David? Are you still swearing to that?
I don't recall.
I don't recall. So then, and I'm a junior at high school at Mayo, right over here. And Dad says, Mom and Dad say, we're moving to Tucson. I said, great. We'll move to Tucson. I'm getting transferred to IBM. And I said, great, Dad. Will I get to Tucson my senior year in high school? And guess how many people I know?
Zip.
So I was a little upset about that for a while. But then it all turned out well in the end. Because, I started my career at Brunswick there in Tucson. Met my beautiful wife. And so, I guess it was a good move after all. And then some other stories that I thought were kind of funny, when I worked for Brunswick, I was the vice president. And I was in charge of 110 locations. And part of that was we would negotiate with the biggest beer companies in the world, because we had a lot of locations. And so we would negotiate with Budweiser and with Miller Lite usually, Miller. And I became good friends with a couple of senior reps at Anheuser-Busch. It was Andy and Toad. And Toad is his real name. Okay. And when I got to know these guys, believe it or not, they took me to the Super Bowl, to the Masters, to the Final Four, to the World Series in Chicago when the White Sox were there. And I'm like, oh, these guys are great. So one day I'm sitting there with Toad and Andy, and I said, why do you keep taking us to all these events? You've got all these corporate sponsors all over the country. And they said, well, we take you because you're kind. And he said, we take some people to a Super Bowl, and they'll be in the end zone seats, and he'll complain. So I'm like, must have gotten that for Dad. We also went to a Twins playoff game. Toad got his tickets to the Metro. think it was Roger Clemens was pitching in the Yankees. Of course, Twins never won. It's the Twins and the Yankees. But, you know, Toad met my dad, and he said, oh, he is a great guy. And I don't know, you know, the parents moved to Fort Myers, and I had a place, Fort Myers. And we played a lot of golf and had a good time. And we met a lot of Canadians. Where's Mo? Raise your hand, Mo. Canadians, I lived in Canada for 3 years. I lived in Edmonton and I worked for Brunswick. And I will tell you, Canadians are the most kind people in the world. And I think that's why they like my dad so much. He's very kind too. And so, and here's a funny story, Mom. I don't know if you remember this. About 12 years ago, Dad and I were playing golf at Soldier Field. Dad trying to quit smoking. And he's got this patch, and he's got this gum, and he's got this other thing. I'm like, I'm that looking at him, I said, don't you think it'd be cheaper just to smoke? Yeah, he said, I'm gonna do that. I don't think Mom was very happy with that. But I would tell you the funniest story was after I left Brunswick, I owned 2 bowling centers. I still own 2 bowling centers. And Mom and Dad decided they're going to come to Indianapolis to visit my bowling center. So they take the train. And of course, the train always comes in at midnight. Last time comes in from Amtrak. So I would go downtown to pick them up, downtown Indianapolis. And sure enough, right next to the Amtrak station is a 24-hour White Castle. Every time we get 20 burgers. And every time I think, are they coming to see me or are they coming to get this? You know? Dad used to love that. So we go visit the bowling center. And, you know, it's nice. And so we go back. And Ann's at home with Mom. You know, and Dad says, come on, let's go bowling. You remember this, Mom? I don't know if you do or not. So we get to the bowling center, and he doesn't have any equipment, so I lent him shoes. And we bowl 3 or 4 games. Of course, we're drinking a little, maybe a lot. And in my bowling center, I have a bar, but I also have a bar across the parking lot that you walk across to. So we get done bowling. He goes, come on, let's go see all those crazy drunk guys over in the park. And I said, okay, we'll go there. So we go over to the sports bar, we call it. And there's a bunch of guys in there like there's whiskey, and they're there every day, and I introduced them to my dad, and they loved him. And one guy named Travis, no one ever beats him in pool. Well, Dad beat him 2 out of 3 games, and they all went crazy. And we're drinking whiskey like it's water, and I'm like, we gotta go, you know? And Dad says, all right. He goes, but I don't think we should be driving. I said, no, we shouldn't be driving. So we call Ann. Was it Ann? Did you come get us, or was it Mom? Was it both of you? I can't remember. I don't know. So we're standing outside the bar, waiting, a little inebriated. I look down, and Dad is still wearing his bowling rental shoes. I said, hey, Dad, I think you better take those off, you know, because do you think we're not drunk now? You know? So Pip ran back to the bowling center and he got his shoes. Yeah. But anyway, that was a really a great story, and we had a good time. So you know, in wrapping this up, I just wanted to tell you, he was a great man, great husband, great father, and a very kind person. I'm sure you all experienced it, and I think we should just be happy for that and celebrate his life. With that, thank you very much.
So this is my dad's brother-in-law, Steve Michaud.
Dear family and friends, I'm Steve Michaud. Mike is my sister. A lot of people call her Michelle, but we've never known her by anything but Mike. I'd like to say a few words about important it was. To know such an extraordinary guy. It's Dave. The background is we lived in South Minneapolis, and my sister Jean married Dave's brother Al in 1954. And Mike was a bridesmaid for the wedding. Dave wasn't there. Dave was in the Navy. So a year goes by, and their son Jim is born. And Jean and Al asked Mike and Dave to be godfather and godmother, baptism. So that's the beginning of the great love story. And after that October meeting, Dave decided, they started seeing each other, and Dave would take Mom to work or pick her up or take her on dates, and it was 1954 and be outside the house, and I saw him a lot. Everybody liked him. And by February or March of 1956, Dave said he was going out to work in California. He was about 21 and I was 11. I wasn't privy to how Mike and Dave stayed in touch with each other during that time. But to our surprise, one day in May of 1986, our mother announced to the lower three children that Mike was going to go out to California to see Dave. It was a bit of a thunderbolt to us because we were very strict Catholics, and in 1955 the idea that someone would be going out to see someone and they were both unmarried was something that young people were curious about. So I wanted to know if you ever got the permission of Monsignor Moynihan. But anyway, she went out there in June, May, and in 3 days they were married. And over the next 67 years, they raised 6 kids. They moved house about 17 times. And they have 22 grandchildren. Thanks for your comments, Tom. It reminds me of what it was like at that time in Minneapolis, because when you mentioned White Castle was a really big deal in 1955. It was right there on Lake Street in Blaisdell, and hadn't thought about that for a long time. I just wanted to tell you a few things about why Dave, some stories about Dave, just as Tom told you stories about Dave. As I said, our family was staunchly Catholic. Our sister Jean had entered the Carmelite convent in Seattle, Washington. And in around 1958, I decided to study at the Crozier Catholic Seminary in Onamia, Minnesota, which is near Bernard. I told my mom after a couple months that I wasn't sure it was such a great idea. And David heard that, and he came up from Rochester, an old brown Pontiac they had, and took me back to Chisholm. And I really think he saved my life. Then in the summer of 1965, I was going to school at St. John's, and Dave arranged for me to work at IBM. He offered me room and board. And I don't think my sister Mike, who had 4 kids and a 5th one on the way, who was always very generous, approved quite of the timing of his generosity. When I was discharged from Vietnam in 1971, Dave, also was a veteran, wanted to celebrate the demobilization. So we drove from Rochester to to Norristown, Pennsylvania, where Jim and Mary and my sister Jean and Dave's brother Al lived. You know, all of my two brothers and my 4 brothers-in-law all served in the military, and that was really important for me in persuading me to serve in Vietnam. After getting a degree in Oriental Studies in England, I went to Taiwan in 1974 to improve my spoken Chinese. And I contracted hepatitis and was hospitalized. When David heard, he contacted Senator Hubert Humphrey's office. And soon there was a person from the U.S. Embassy coming to the hospital to see if I was okay. When I needed a spinal fusion at the Mayo Clinic in 1986, Mike and Dave put me up at their home on 18th Avenue Southwest from the end of April until July. Dave would come to the hospital every day at 7 in the morning to give me the New York Times. After I was discharged from the hospital, I recuperated at Mike and Dave's home. And then Dave took the plane with me back to New York and drove my car back to Minnesota. For the last 27 years, we spoke every Saturday to bet on NFL games. We practiced this together with my brother Joe, who's a real piece of work. And the betting went on until 2011, and then just until Dave died the week before the NFL started our 28th season. Mentioning my brother Joe reminds me of one of those Dave's special qualities. And it sort of echoes what his son Tom said. As I've mentioned, and as you all probably know, Dave was generally a straight arrow guy. The kind of guy who never hit false notes or ever crossed the line into being raucous or contentious or rowdy. That was sort of the polar opposite of my brother Joe, who never saw a line he didn't want to cross or a potential for rowdiness he wanted to avoid. One reason I think Dave liked Joe so much is because of Joe's devil-may-care attitude. And that, I think, was the key to one of the qualities of Dave's being so special. Let me briefly explain. When I was young, John Kennedy captured our imagination. He seemed to have everything. He went to Harvard, he was a war hero, he married a beautiful woman. He wrote one of the best books I've ever read, Profiles in Courage, which you might want to read today to get the perspective on how important people can make a difference in their history. Before he was elected president, Kennedy described himself as an idealist without illusions. An idealist without illusions. I was just finishing high school at the time, and I was dazzled by that expression, remembered it all my life. How it deftly combined two contradictory qualities into one aspiration. For me, David was a person who was able to do that. He was a straight arrow, but he was never a stuffed shirt. He lived a proper, respectful life, but he was never a stick in the mud. He was a respected and valuable team player for 37 years for IBM. But he could do some things that were surprising for a guy who was otherwise careful and by the book. Like buying a car sight unseen from somebody in Iowa. Or buying a Jeep sight unseen from somebody in Arizona. Or buying a condo sight unseen from someone in Florida. Or putting on a grass skirt while skiing at karaoke bar with IBM colleagues in Japan. My favorite example of this is how the usually conventional Dave Funk could suddenly do something so unconventional yet uncontroversial in the sense of drawing attention. Dave always liked frogs. There were frogs everywhere. In the garden, in the house, Mike would knit frogs on things. Dave always liked frogs. So he decided one day to get a tattoo of a frog on his ankle when he was 80 years old. I can only feel gratitude for having been a friend and brother-in-law of such a guy. From my point of view, Google should arrange so that whenever people Google Greatest Generation, a picture of Dave Funk comes up. May he rest in peace.
So I just really have I'd like to share a few memories of our dad from growing up. It's almost written kind of a poem. Red and white Vista cruiser, taking the family places. Pequot lakes, painted turtles, speedboat, fishing. Are we there yet? How much longer? Wherever we were going. Trips to Silver Lake, fireworks, cherry bomb lit from cigarette, in mouth, tossed from Vista Cruiser. Excitement, fear, thrills, powerful memories. Trips to liquor store, 3 cases North Star, suckers for me and Tom. Mom with car, pick up dad from IBM, all of us shouting, "Run, Daddy, run!" And he does. Shotguns, shells, whitewater, deer, thanks Tom. Best was Kermie's bar, after. Uncles Joe and Steve visiting, touch football, poker, late nights, whiskey, lifelong friends. So cool. Christmas pool tourney, 20 on the line, or HORSE, or bocce. May the best one win. Lots of motor toys, Carmen Gia, a thing, a Fiat, burnt up, sorry about that, Dad. Alfa Romeo, Silverwing, life is good tattoo. True, true, true. Most of all, love and caring, providing for us. Thank you, Dad, for bringing us into this world. You are now at peace, and we are thankful for that. Amen.
Amen.
So I think, Mom, if you'd like, we can go ahead and put you can go ahead and put Did tell them what you said. made sure there was room for her to get in there. That's what she just said. So, there's a song that my dad really loved a lot, and my mom asked that we play it for him, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Oops.
David's iPhone connected.
Clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops high above the chimney top. That's where you find me, oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high. The dream that you did to why, oh why can't
This concludes our graveside service. Thank you all for being here. And I have bugged a lot of you about signing the register books. I hope everyone has signed that for the family. Thank you.
Let's see, his family's all going to go over to the waters, so. Just for family. Make sure you got a mask. And make sure you got a mask.